This concept started really with a desire to do something new and interesting for the industrial design team to experiment with some ideas without the constraints of production. It's something we've been thinking about doing for a while now. Obviously, Royal Enfield have recently invested a lot of money in our capability, both in Bruntingthorpe and in India. You know, we have a great brand heritage that goes all the way back to 1901. And in the 1920s and the 1930s, Royal Enfield made some great V-twins, and one in particular was the KX. And that bike had a really great proportion and stance, and it's something we'd been looking at, you know, photos of them on the internet. We bought one for the UK Tech Centre as well as a reference model. And so the project started there really, you know, experimenting with those proportions and those shapes and those forms. And I think, you know, we've come up with a really great representation of that.
Best known for its bullet singles and post-war parallel twins, such as the Interceptor, it's not widely known that before the Second World War, the mainstay of Royal Enfield's model range was always a V-twin. The first V-twin was introduced at the end of 1909 and featured a 2¼ horsepower Swiss-made motor Sacoche engine. By the mid-1920s, Royal Enfield had developed its own V-twin engine, 976cc, and in 1930, the bike with that engine in was called the Model K. The KX soon followed. When I look at this new design, I can see quite a few elements from the original Model KX. The stance, the proportions of it seem just right. Even the way that the sump is ahead of the cylinders, the line of the exhaust, the silencers that clearly reflect the Royal Enfield V-twins of the 1930s. Everything looks just right on it.
What you tend to read in car and motorcycle design magazines is that the design is the quest of the single warrior who has to defend his great idea against everyone else just corrupting it. But in truth, great design is always the result of a strong team coming together and having a conversation, asking themselves all the what-ifs that keep creative minds thinking. You know, I've always loved the original KX. It's not as well known as some of the bikes that Royal Enfield has done, like the Bullet. But I've always admired its stance, its low slung proportion. And it's really difficult to capture that in a modern bike. We started by drafting out an engine layout. It's a 60 degrees V-twin, and we packaged it as precisely as we could, including alternator, gearbox, valve gear. Everything is fairly feasible. Around that, we could then start to do all the proportional exploration to try and get to as close as possible to the original KX.